Hello, it's time to talk about Chainsaw Man Part 2. I'm going to be treating this video the same as I treated the first one, where I'm going to be more focused on characters and themes as opposed to trying to recap beat by beat plot points. In fact, I'll skip over entire plot points because, well, that's not my focus, but also because this part isn't even done yet, but we're going to talk about it. Part 2 starts off with the introduction of Bucky, who is allegedly charming, yet he's set to be killed in 100 days. And Asa is a bit of an outcast and generally irritated with life among her peers and in the wider world. In this opening sequence, we have an emphasis on the importance of valuing life, even in unexpected places, and on the desire to have a place of belonging and companionship in this world. We're also introduced to Asa being a klutz, which is hilarious, even if there's a little bit of trauma baked in. But right before Asa dies, she realizes that everyone is jealous of someone, that this feeling that has led her to isolating herself is actually just a common human experience. And if she had realized that sooner, she might have actually found that belonging and camaraderie that she didn't realize was beneath the surface for her. So when Asa gets a second chance at life, we watch her story unfold as she still, while having this knowledge, she still isolates herself, yet she's forced into situations where she starts to build those relationships anyway, sometimes under threat of death. In this situation, Asa doesn't have agency over her body or her life. She gets a second chance at life, but this life is being ruled by another, and at any point her body can be taken over and she can be forced to do things that she never wanted to do. But at the same time, Asa is still in control. Though she can't control having her body taken over, when she's in control, she still is the one that has the final say in what happens, which is why Yoru has to manipulate her emotionally, mentally, in order to try to make her do her bidding. And Yoru isn't able to break through the barrier. She isn't able to take over Asa's body if Asa is in some sort of extreme distress or a situation like that, which I think is important. I think there's a lot to be taken from that. Yoru has the power to turn what's hers into weapons, and she told Asa, if you want to live, your body will be mine. And it's a fact that she keeps repeating to her. It's interesting that Asa belongs to War, yet War can't fully control her. And in fact, Yoru is affected and shaped by Asa. Yoru wants to turn as many humans as she can into weapons so she can go to war with Chainsaw Man, and the promise is that Asa will get her body back if she helps defeat him. And now she has an inner demon who knows her true motivations, and attempts to use those to manipulate her into more horrible acts for Yoru's own benefit. But Asa has her own conscience, and even though Yoru keeps saying that Asa is hers, she has trouble turning Asa into the weapon that she wants her to be. It seems that it's Asa's heart being in the right place that preserves her ability to fight in this tug of war that she's in over agency over her life. At least that's my interpretation of it, and I think it's relevant that we're in a story where Denji's heart has been a huge emphasis. The fact that Chainsaw Man is his new heart, and the fact that Denji is learning to understand the desires of his heart, his dreams, the things that he wants the most in the world. He's trying to figure out what exactly those look like and the deeper meaning behind it. And in part 2, Denji wrestles with the reality that being Chainsaw Man is an integral piece of who he is now. And Chainsaw Man and Denji are connected through his heart and his stomach later on. And there's a lot that Denji and Asa are directly connected in their own personal journeys and what they're learning about themselves and figuring out, so it just seems relevant to me. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Yuko serves as an early contrast to Asa. Asa is the loner, and Yuko is the person who saw Asa being wronged and was willing to do anything to do right by her, just because it was right. Right away, we get more pressure from Yoku and manipulation so that she can get what she wants. But Asa determines for herself that she's willing to do anything to do what's right. Very quickly, we see that Yuko is trying to be her own kind of justice, and later learn that her motivations were never what they looked like from the start. And now, with her new ability to understand people, as she puts it, she's manipulating Asa too. She wants to be her own justice, her own version of Chainsaw Man, and she kills many, not just the bullies, in the process. After Yuko made the contract, she started getting pressed with all these external thoughts and pressures, just like Asa, and she couldn't hold on to herself among the chaos. And with Yuko's abilities, Yoku couldn't defeat her. Only Asa could. by sacrificing something truly valuable to her. And Denji helped as well by being so aggressively Denji. Even after Yuko admits to having ulterior motives for her kindness and befriending her, Asa still wants to show her kindness, because even if it comes back to bite her, she wants her heart to be in the right place. I think this is what makes Asa resistant to Yoru. We saw it introduced in concept through Yuko, but it wasn't sincere, so Yuko was overtaken. But we see it in action and followed through with in Asa. And I'm suspect that this is why Denji couldn't be used as a weapon by her either. Not because he doesn't care about Asa or because he's stupid. I don't know, I mean, maybe it's those reasons. But maybe it's also because of his sincere heart. I do also think that there was a lot of sincerity in Yuko. I'm going to talk about this later in the video. I think that one big emphasis on this arc is in teens having very conflicting desires and natures, and feeling like you're going crazy and even out of control of yourself because you can't work out everything that's going on inside of you. And I think that that's displayed in different ways with Denji and with Asa. I'll talk about it later, but I just want to say that here with Yuko. I think that that's true for Yuko as well. But I think the reason that Asa could fight back against, you know, the inner impulses that were trying to persuade her into darkness, the reason she could push back past it and Yuko couldn't was because she's the protagonist, but also because of a little bit more sincerity. I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into it. Anyway, I loved Yuko's character. I loved her role in this. She was so dark. Reading her section was so fun to see her just casually sitting in the chair, admitting to having killed a guy for the most bonkers reason, but in her mind, justice. In her mind, it was justice. And the whole time, Asa's sitting there going, "You kidding? Is that a joke? That's crazy." And Yuko is just like, "No, it's real. You want to see the body? I still have it." And then she decides that she's going to be justice for Asa, for the bully. She's going to be Chainsawman, essentially. And she's like, "Don't go to school tomorrow." And the fire all around her as she's, oh my goodness. It was just, she was so creepy. And the way she would talk to her neighbor when her neighbor was checking in on her, and she's like, "No problem, I have a friend here." She's just casually having a chat while she's interrupted having admitted to murder, then has a casual chat with the neighbor, and then pops back over to just gaslight her friend and be like, "Don't worry, I'll keep your secret too, about peeing your pants, about war being inside of you." And it's just like, it's so dark, it's so disturbing, and I love it. There was also commentary around bullying too. There's always, you know, I'm always picking at the threads of what's happening about the main characters, but each arc and plotline also has commentary, social commentary of its own as well. I really liked the commentary when the whole school blew up. And Yuko, Yoru, different characters. And Yuko, having done all that, and then, you know, you're watching the TV and you're listening to people on the phone, and they're just like, "Oh yeah, it was bullying. Weak minds, you know, this is just gonna happen. If there's schools and then kids are gonna get picked on, what are you gonna do?" She should have been tougher. You know, when a kid is bullied for years and then they snap, and then people's response, all really good. Okay, back to the point of the video. So just like Asa, Denji also has an outside source trying to pull the strings on him. And in his own special way, he keeps from being forced to do what's demanded of him from the start. And just like Yoru can take over Asa's body, so too, Denji's conflict takes away his bodily agency, as well as trying to mentally manipulate him into doing what they want. Not just that, but the poor lad never stops being manipulated in the dating arena too. I really feel bad for the kid. In part one, we've seen growth from Denji. In part one, you know, he was after, "I just want to touch some boobs." And then we saw the growth of him as he was getting closer and closer to that dream and realizing this isn't actually what I wanted, until he gets to the point where, you know, he's looking for something deeper. And in part two, at the very beginning, his new goal, what he's telling people he wants is, "I want a girlfriend." Granted, he also declares, "I want sex, I want lots of ladies." So there's a lot of, but he's actually declaring, "I want a girlfriend." So he's starting to understand that the thing that he actually wants is something that has something with a deeper meaning, something with deeper companionship, because the feelings would be there too, and not just the act itself. So he's getting there. He's starting to get there. And we had several scenes where, you know, we see him deliberately making a choice that maybe might not have been made in part one. And in part two, all the time, around every corner. We just see him continuing to be manipulated. The poor lad. He wants these very basic things, and the whole world is out to give him those basic things only for their own gain. And he ends up getting hurt over and over again because of it. One thing I really like about part 2 is that we do bring back old enemies and expand on them. We build on what's already been established in what they look like, in what they can do. It's such a fun aspect of part 2 to already have the foundation and to bring back a lot of things as well as add new things. But through these interactions with old foes and new ones, we also see these two kids bond and fall for each other. Not because either of them is good at this or even really trying that hard, but because of their sincerity of hearts. These kids have no idea what they're doing, and it's messy, and they hurt each other a lot, but they're also finding their sense of belonging together. And as they do so, it is never lacking in Denji being Denji. This is also where we meet Famine, who is totally not lying about who she is. I also love the role Nayuta plays in Denji's life. Seeing Denji being a big brother is so satisfying for his character, and I think it's necessary for his growth. But Nayuta has to grow too. She tries to control Denji's situation for her own benefit. She considers Denji her property, which we've seen before. But the difference between her and others is that she genuinely loves him. And we get to see him really go through an internal battle and a desire to sacrifice for something that has nothing to do with personal gain. We see him sacrificing for her at the beginning of part 2, where he's finding ways to get more money so that he can give her a better future, because he thinks that she has a lot of potential. He thinks that she has a lot of opportunity, and he wants to give her, I think, what was never afforded to him. He meets her needs, he's there for her, even when she's being manipulative and selfish with him, he still is so kind and patient with her. And I think seeing him in this older brother role, interacting with someone in a more familial way, which obviously we got in part 1, and we got it with Power, and it was amazing with Power, and I probably preferred it in part 1, but I still think that it was great to see it here as well in a different kind of way. Still taking care of a little sister, a bratty little sister. It's very similar to part 1, just part 1 did it better. I still like her. I still like her and her dynamic with Denji. At the start of part 2, Denji is forced to make a decision between saving a student with a bright future or 5 elderly people in a car. And Denji, always the fast thinker, chooses which life to save. And now he's put in that position again. Never turn into Chainsawman again, or your little sister dies. But this is a real struggle for him, because yes, he sees being Chainsawman as a means to get the ladies, but more deeply, Chainsawman is a core piece of who he is now. He's forced to choose between who he is and who he loves. I think the big thing that's emphasized in part 2 is when your dreams are met, what do you do now? For Denji, all he ever wanted was his basic needs. He wanted shelter, he wanted food, and he wanted some level of companionship. Now he eats regularly, he has food, his stomach is never so hungry that he just eats toilet paper because there's nothing else to be had. And now he looks back at such a weird example that I've latched onto, but this is a conversation he had. Now he looks back and he could never make himself eat toilet paper again, even though it was seemingly a common practice for him back when he had nothing to fill his stomach. But now that he's here, he doesn't want to go backwards. Just the same, now that he's Chainsawman, he doesn't want to go backwards. He can't give that up. It's a piece of who he is. And this struggle of feeling guilty that what you used to dream of, what used to be everything to you, the idea of being able to eat more than just bread, now you have it and you want more. And so like he feels guilty over his dreams being accomplished and having new dreams. Which is why I love that conversation with Puchita when he essentially gives Denji permission to dream more. Asks him, what's your next dream? We're not done here. When Puchita asked him what his next dream is, it gives him permission to be thankful for what he has, but also to keep dreaming. He doesn't have to stop. And the truth is that Denji wants to be Chainsawman. This is a piece of who he is. This is a part of him, and he doesn't want to give it up. But the fact that his admission happens here, while looking at the house that's burning down, I think this is significant. Denji tends to say one thing, and it's an honest thing. He's telling the truth. It's just the more surface level thing, and then there's a deeper meaning to be seen in the subtext, or if you just like pay attention to his thoughts, you can see that there's more there. Denji keeps reiterating that he wants to be Chainsaw Man so that people will discover that he's Chainsaw Man, so that the ladies will love him and he can get lots of girls. And that's true. He wants that. But the fact that this scene happens accompanied with him looking at the house where his pets are being burned alive, I think indicates that deeper meaning for him, which is he wants to protect. Nayuta deals with this inner conflict in her own way too. She has memories of who she once was and what her goals were before, and she feels an obligation to continue to pursue them to really understand herself better. But who she is now wants something different. In fact, what she wants lines up with what Denji and Asa are looking for too: family. But with that, there's also an emphasis on a past that haunts them. Not just Denji and Nayuta, but Asa too. I also think that the Asa-Yoru dynamic is an external display of a teenager feeling so conflicted between themselves, figuring out who they really are, acting out in one way, but not wanting to, and feeling a little bit out of control of yourself, with your impulses and feelings, and what to do about them all. Asa even admits that she's afraid of solitude and companionship. Both. She has this inner struggle of what she really wants in life, and that makes her act kind of crazy. We get to see that more overtly in Denji, wrestling between himself and what impulses he follows, hating himself for not being able to figure it out. And I think that what we're watching is Denji and Asa showing the same complex, just in different ways. I feel so bad for the kids in this scene. The one that was just Denji crying alone in the alleyway after Yoru took over Asa's body. And that was a wild scene. I feel so bad for these kids because for Denji, he's just trying to have some sort of relationship. He's just trying to figure out, do you like me? Because you keep saying you hate me, but then you're doing this other thing and I'm confused, and also, like, new experiences are exciting, but also this is really unfulfilling the way it's happening. Like, he's constantly being toyed with everybody in his life. And it takes such a toll on this poor kid. I mean, it's breaking him to be so, he's already so confused by what's going on inside of him. And so to now have to deal with all of this outside turmoil when he just wants a girl to like him and to be in a relationship and all that comes with it. And just the same, Asa likes him, doesn't really know what to do with it, isn't sure if he likes her too. She's really conflicted about how she should move from here, but also her body is being taken over and she's being forced to do things that she finds completely humiliating and that she would never want to do. And that's really violating for her too. So both of these teenagers are dealing with this conflict of not really understanding what's going on in their minds, in their hearts, in their bodies, and they're acting out of control of themselves, and they're both left in this desperate and disappointed and vulnerable state because of it. Anyway, I'm skipping over a lot of things, but part 2 has so much humor that is so reminiscent. Like, it's the same humor as part 1, and it's just as frequent and just as good, in my opinion. Like, this interaction when Denji explains that once his secret is out, the ladies will be all over him, and the fact that he just doesn't have a response for that logic, or the repeated gag that no matter how intense the situation is or how cool Asa just was in the scene prior, she's still inevitably going to trip and fall down and ruin everything. We have really cool new foes with bonkers designs, but also just the mechanics of making someone remember your worst memories, your biggest traumas, and then it makes you feel like you're falling, which is actually a physical thing for these characters to go through. But then you also have human foes that are just like, this guy is the worst, this guy is the worst, that are easy to hate, is what I was trying to say. I do think that the art suffers a lot of the time. In part 1, I don't think that it's as strong panel to panel, but there are still some killer spreads and amazing twists, like Death having lied to us the entire time about who she was. Did not see it coming. Oh, it makes me just relook at all of these scenes differently. In general, I like part 1 far better than part 2 so far. It's not really fair to compare a finished thing with an unfinished thing, but what are you gonna do? I'm talking about it right now. And so far, as we are right here, right now, I like part 1 a lot better. I think there were certain arcs that I didn't love as much in part 1 as well, but in part 2 there are some that I just don't. care, like I didn't care about the Hell arc very much in part 1 because it was adding a ton of new characters without really building them up, and it was a side tangent, and I just wanted to get back to Denji and his plot, his narrative, because that was what I was the most interested in. Whereas in part 2, when you have this whole like cult plot line, you're adding a bunch of new characters and all this extra stuff, but it's not even interesting. At least in part 1, the Hell arc was like it was cool artistically and there were amazing things happening, and I just, anyway, there's sections of part 2 that I don't love. And as far as support characters go, even though I love Asa, and there's a lot thematically that's happening that I'm finding very interesting, I far prefer the secondary characters in part 1. And even Denji's internal struggle and character growth I found more compelling in part 1. Again, part 2 isn't done yet, but I was really invested in it all from the start with Denji. With all that said, that's not me saying I don't like part 2. Hopefully the, I don't know, like 15 minutes of content before I've gotten to this part of the review, hopefully you understand that I do still like it, but I just like part 1 more. That said, the current arc that we're on that's not finished yet, I'm loving. There's heavy commentary here about warfare and the treatment of children in the midst of it, the destruction that comes in the bid for power, and an older generation with no faith in the next generation controlling progress. It's all on the older generation's shoulders to know what's right and to lead the world in the right direction. If it takes sacrificing the children for the greater goal, so be it. And even the tactics to manipulate someone into committing such atrocities, as long as it's not your children, right? This is even tied back in with Yoru. To reach her goals, she'd do anything, even sacrifice her own children. It's all just the cost of war, right? The Aging Devil has this killer design that I think just symbolically also fits with what it's doing to people. And I find it so fascinating that neither Chainsaw Man nor War are mature enough to even talk to, let alone defeat, the fear of aging. One of the characters said that it was looking in the mirror and seeing the wrinkles that made the man fear aging. And now he's stuck in this youthfulness, and it's empty and isolating, and it drives him mad in this forest of trees. And I think all this also ties into stuff that we've been talking about up to this point throughout the entire arc. The need to move forward, to not cling to the past. In Denji, it was explored in his need to find a new dream. In Nayuta, it was to move past her old self and see what she wants now, and so on. And now we're looking at it on more of a worldwide scale, and believing in the next generation as opposed to sacrificing the next generation in order to cling to what's of the past. Even Yoru is a part of this thematically, in that she is so desperate to make sure that the world remembers her, that she isn't subject to the natural cycle of life that humanity is currently resisting. She too is resisting being forgotten and left behind. There's so much going on in this arc that ties into these themes that have been building up from the very beginning of part 2. And these kids are in an impossible situation, and it's not going to stop being chaotic anytime soon. Overall, even though I did, mention that I like part 1 better than part 2, again, feels a little bit unfair to judge it at this point because part 1's ending was so fantastic, and we haven't gotten that yet for part 2. And what's building up right now is building up. I'm really excited about it. But it's not done, so I can't talk about it as if it's done. So this is where I am, 200 chapters in. I've now caught up to current release at the point that this video is being filmed, and I wanted to discuss it. I would love to hear your thoughts. Are there themes and things that you're connecting with more specifically, that you're loving, that I didn't even touch on? Are there characters that you're loving more? Do you love part 2 more? Why? Please do chat with me more about this in the comment section. I would love to continue discussing it with you. I will see you again soon. Bye.